Thanks for clicking on this video. Be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon and turn on all notifications to keep up to date with the latest information and discussions. Kakarot. It's more than just a name. It's a dollar sign. Or more accurately, a yen sign. Hey guys, MasakoX here. The topic of today's video is not something that has been around since the early days of Dragon Ball, but it's pretty significant in what it actually represents. Again, it may not have been stated in episode 1 of Dragon Ball, but it has now become one of the most significant parts and a really big trope within Dragon Ball. And thanks to a certain character saying it so many times within a certain trilogy, it's kind of lost all of its meaning. Yeah, we are going to be talking about the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie again, but we're going to be just talking about not a scene or anything like that, but a certain line, the last line. And okay, this is a bit of a spoiler, so I will preface that first. It's something that could easily pass you by and you don't really notice it upon first viewing, but now that we've actually watched it a few times, this line is pretty significant. Stay tuned, because this episode is going to be focused entirely on Kakarot! Well, okay, maybe not said like that, but yeah, Kakarot. So picture this. You've watched about an hour and 40 minutes of some really good Dragon Ball action and content, and you're just starting to wind things down in the movie. It's the end, everything's done, resolved, and yeah, everything's kind of established for the next arc in the series, or maybe the next movie. Goku is saying his goodbyes and turns around to the Saiyan before he leaves, saying what his name is. And both in the sub and dub, he mentions that Broly can call him Kakarot. However, we must actually state that the way he says this is quite different between the Japanese and the English version. In the dub, when Chilai asks what Goku's name is, he says, "It's Goku, but Broly, call me Kakarot." But in the subtitled version, Goku just says, "Son Goku," or Kakarot. So as you might be able to tell, in the dubbed version, there is a lot of fan service going on here, with Goku specifically telling Broly to call him Kakarot. So we are establishing that the next time that Broly and Goku meet, Broly will say Kakarot, and people will then go, "He said the thing! He said the thing!" And yeah, admittedly, I was waiting for Broly to say Kakarot at some point in the movie. It was too obvious upon reflection, and it was low-hanging fruit, and I'm glad that Toriyama didn't take that opportunity. And yes, the subtitle version is a bit more subdued, with Goku inviting everybody there to call him Kakarot, but nevertheless, in both versions of the movie, this is a phenomenal way to end it. Why exactly? Well, it's not necessarily the actual content, but it is about the person who says it. We're used to Vegeta calling Goku Kakarot because that's just par for the course, that's the way it's always been. But Goku calling himself Kakarot? That's never really happened. Or at least, not in a way that he's actually glad to say it. Here on the MasakoX channel, we like to talk about character arcs and development, and the whole thing about character iconography, and how recently when Dragon Ball, well, I say recently, for a long time, it has stalled quite badly. We like to point out that certain characters recently have had a tour de force of development, most notably Android 17 and Roshi. But at the same time, there are characters who have been stuck in a rut for the longest time because they're too popular. I'm looking at you, Vegeta and Gohan. And this whole discussion came about when a friend of mine, totally not Mark, did a video talking about Goku's character development over the years. And it's seriously worth a watch in conjunction with this video, because Mark brings up some really good points that I feel that you really need to know. Mark describes Goku having a flat character arc, which is something that we're going to be referring to in this video a couple of times. Long story short though, Goku is the one transforming the world around him, using his truth and personality to change characters around him for the better. It's something that is used all the time in anime, particularly in the Persona series, where the main character is meant to be ambiguous and just a vessel to try and stimulate other side characters into becoming interesting and therefore profitable. If you just put Goku in a scenario on his own like we see in the first couple of scenes of Dragon Ball, just living in the woods and just doing his thing, that would get pretty boring pretty quickly. Goku's impact and significance within the world of anime and popular culture comes from his interactions with other characters. We see that with Piccolo, Krillin, Vegeta. They start off one way, and thanks to their interaction with Goku, they become entirely different, getting these huge character arcs which endears those characters to us, and why there are so many people that say, "Oh, we love that side character." Now, one thing worth remembering when we're talking about this discussion is that when you come up with a certain character, it's really hard for a character to only have one character arc throughout the time that we are actually around them. But unfortunately, in many narratives, we see it too often. So, okay, a character has their progression. They have a character arc, they get to the end of it, then what? Unfortunately, in Dragon Ball, quite a lot of the time, when the character arc is done for them, they are then pushed into the background and they kind of just exist for exposition's sake. Tenshinhan, Yamcha, I feel for you. Basically, most of the original Dragon Ball cast. And to say that Goku had everything figured out is a little bit too simplistic. You see, Goku has changed over the years somewhat, but his original core philosophy from when he was a little boy is still very much intact. At the same time though, he has learnt plenty of life lessons, which means that he can function quite easily within society, although considered a little bit weird by many people. That's all down to the fact that Grandpa Gohan and Roshi taught him very much the basics and principles of discipline. You gotta throw in Korin in there as well. Grandpa Gohan introduced politeness to Goku, but then Roshi and Korin built up on that by adding discipline and patience. Well, as much patience as they could give Goku. With those three people, Goku was able to actually come into society and be around people for a seemingly substantial amount of time. Well, okay, he does have flashes of selfishness and tempestuousness. And not to mention impulsiveness, but it's still progress. Goku has certainly matured, even though sometimes it may not seem that way. There have been two very crucial moments where we have seen this maturity at its fullest. Our first example comes at the end of the Cell games, when Goku realizes that his plan to make Gohan the next strongest fighter has backfired badly, and that he needs to own the fact that he messed up and clean up this mess. That's not something an immature and selfish person would do. That's a pretty bold gesture, and it did lead to Gohan realizing his potential, so some good did come out of it. I mean, at least for a time. The second moment of maturity comes from when he's trying to convince Vegeta to fuse with him against Super Buu. Yes, Goku could have thrown a tantrum or whatnot, or forced Vegeta to do it, but he took his time, convincing very seriously that Vegeta needed to do this, which ultimately got him what he wanted. We might argue though that that actually had something to do with selfishness because he realized how much stronger he could become due to his time in the other world, but the fact that he was able to convince Vegeta of all people to do what he wanted, and even though Vegeta really did not want to do what Goku told him to do, it's still a pretty big thing needed to be mentioned. Now, understandably, we were all a little bit saddened when we realized that in Dragon Ball Super, Goku had regressed a lot in terms of his character development and his maturity. Sure, he could fight and become stronger, because that's what Goku does, but in terms of actually conveying his authority and leadership like he did in Z, Super's version of Goku doesn't really do that all that much. Yeah, he is the strongest, but he's not the most mature. And sure, the flat character arc that Mark and I have talked about, still applies, but we often felt that certain character traits of Goku's had just been reverted back to what they were before, or forgotten altogether. So you could say that Goku's character arc wasn't just flat, it was actually kinda downhill. Well, okay, yeah, what has this all got to do with Goku's farewell line to Broly then? Well, a lot to be honest. In fact, many times throughout human history, the uttering of a single sentence or even a single word can have absolutely significant and huge consequences. It's understandable and justifiable that Goku uttering his Saiyan name without any reservation or hesitation has caused ripples within the Dragon Ball lore and for Goku's character arc. We managed to actually discover something. What Goku's character arc was, and why it's taken so long, and it all had to do with his Saiyan name, and him accepting it. Goku has finally, after 20 in-world years of resisting it, finally accepted his duality, his dual name. He's no longer just Goku who happens to be a Saiyan on Earth. He is both Goku and Kakarot. And not only that, he is able to establish a personal bond between himself and Broly, something that we never thought would ever happen. This is something that no one else can claim, not even Vegeta. Yes, Vegeta calls Goku Kakarot many times, but Goku's never really accepted it or really acknowledged it. And what's more, despite Goku not really accepting Vegeta's use of the word Kakarot, I think Goku at least understands now why Vegeta calls him Kakarot in the first place. You probably didn't think about this the first time you watched this, and I completely understand why. I don't blame you for that at all. That movie was pretty hype, but by accepting the name Kakarot, it's Goku accepting his Saiyan pride fully. Something that Raditz and Vegeta together have been trying to instill within Goku ever since they first met. It's also taught Goku something else. Before he sets off and discovers other universes, which he's longing to do, there is still stuff that he can actually do within Universe 7 before he goes off and does all of that. He doesn't need to go out and fight Jiren again or discover other strong guys. He can still find that within Universe 7. His core focus is to get stronger and fight strong guys, something that he's wanted to do ever since he was a little kid. But by accepting the name Kakarot, he understands a whole new aspect of himself. But by him discovering Broly and realizing his Saiyan roots, it kind of brought to Goku's attention that he set his eyes far too far away from his homeworld. With that one scene, we've managed to break down the barriers of character iconography that we have been lambasting on this channel for the longest time. Something has changed within Goku's mentality, which has meant that he's able to mellow out. He's not as desperate to get out into the other universes now. And this all began at the start of the universe survival arc, surprisingly. Do you remember that line from the second opening, "I can't get no satisfaction"? That satisfaction wasn't met by the Tournament of Power or by Jiren, it was by meeting Broly. Goku was able to get his satisfaction from Broly, because this guy is another Saiyan and lives in Universe 7. He can get satisfied anytime, and meeting Jiren in other universes, oh, that's just a fun bonus. I feel that this satisfaction came from Broly and not from Jiren, because Goku and Jiren only fought at best for 48 minutes, whereas with Broly, they fought for a lot longer, and they can fight again anytime. With Goku fighting Jiren again, there's no guarantee that that would happen, because Jiren, remember, is a pride trooper, and he doesn't like fighting. He is just attaining absolute strength. It's gonna take a long time for the barriers to come down between Jiren and Goku, like it did between Goku and Hit. Local lore is gonna be back at the forefront again, instead of reaching out for new lore. There is something else which I think needs to be brought to our attention. In the movie, Goku is trying to contain Broly and try and bring him back using the same tactics that he uses with his other former enemies. He tries to keep telling them, "You're not a bad guy, you know, I see good in you." And usually this works for Goku, but at the time it didn't work with Broly. His usual tactic failed him. And it's not because of Goku's flat character arc or anything, it's because of Broly's character arc. Broly is the one who provides inspiration for both Goku and Vegeta. Broly is the one who actually convinces Chilai and Lemmo to become better people, instead of just being skivvies for Lord Frieza. You know how we say that Frieza has now become the harbinger of doom and chaos within the Dragon world? Well, I guess we can say now that Broly has become the harbinger, or the provider, of inspiration for any character due to his pure nature. You may even jokingly say that Broly's change is actually so good that he can revert Goku's own narrative advantage against him. And really, realistically, Broly doesn't really change much throughout that movie. Broly doesn't want to fight, he just wants a friend. And granted, yes, throughout the second half of the movie, that is completely done away with entirely just for the sake of a fight, because Broly's out of control, but it does come back again, fortunately, so it's not just a shoot entirely. And of course, at the end of the story, there is a hint that Goku does want to bring back the whole idea of Broly fighting, but at least on his terms, which is a lot different from what Paragus wanted for Broly. In any case, Goku is going to make that happen and make Broly fight, because otherwise, what's the point of Broly being in Dragon Ball? But at the end of the day though, it's Broly who made Goku realize that he should be proud to be a Saiyan. It wasn't Vegeta that made him realize that, it was this new guy, another pure being like him. And I think it'll be super interesting with Goku trying to return the favor and actually try and convince Broly that he should be proud to be a fighter, but at least something that is a bit more amiable. Because you get the feeling that Broly kinda wants to train with Goku and be strong, with that smile and stuff like that. But I think it's gonna take a bit more convincing, but I'm very excited to see how they go about it. So what do you guys think? Do you think Goku will now change for the better in Super, or whatever the new series is? Or do you think Broly will actually be able to integrate himself well within the series entirely? Leave a comment below, and let's get this discussion going. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Until the next one, be sure to like and subscribe. Catch you later!